Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Newport Chamber's Wake Up Newport program this morning. I'm Alberto Sandoval, Senior Director of Community and Government Relations at UC Irvine. It's a rainy morning, but glad you all were able to make it out. I'm going to silence my phone here. Before we hear from our wonderful DA, we're going to have some quick words from our business mayor. He might not be elected, but he's the voter's choice to be the business mayor, so Steve Rosansky.
He does a much better job than Rush Hill ever did. I'm just saying, all right? Good morning, I'm Steve Rosansky, President and CEO of the Newport Beach Chamber of Commerce, and welcome to our May edition of Wake Up Newport. We got a great speaker, so I'm going to run through this quickly so we can get him. Todd's got to leave sharp by 8:30, so we want to make sure we get the most out of him. But before we introduce him, there are some dignitaries with us this morning that I'd like to introduce. So first off, City Councilman Joe Stapleton's with us. Joe, in the back. Next to him is our Fire Chief, Jeff Boyles. The Harbor Master's in the house this morning, Paul Blank. Back there. Howard Herzog with the Civil Service Board. I think he said he was the chair now. Chair of the board? All right. John Langford, new Planning Commission member. John, here. He's also chair of the Friends of the Newport Beach Animal Shelter, right? They're getting ready to, I'm not going to say anything other than they're getting ready to donate a turnkey animal shelter to the city, fully paid for and funded by the fondest people. Great job. Dorothy Larson with the Library Foundation's here this morning. Good morning, Dorothy. And last but not least, that silver-haired gentleman back there with the yellow tie. I almost said something else. Paul Watkins, chair of the Library Board, or the Library Board of Trustees. Yeah. I don't know if I missed anybody else, but if I did, you're all important to us. Thank you for coming. Our assistant city manager's here. So I'm going to turn it over back to Alberto. He's going to introduce our speaker, and then I'll have a few closing remarks about some upcoming events. Oh, Diane Harkey's here too. Diane, good morning. She had a lot of elected positions. She did a lot of stuff. There you go. A recovering politician. We love that. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Alberto, and then I'll have some closing remarks at the end. Thank you.
What happened to your leg? We got some good doctors at UCI. All right. Todd Spitzer is a former high school teacher and reserve police officer assigned to DUI enforcement and patrol duties. Spitzer earned a bachelor's degree from UCLA, a master's degree in public policy from UC Berkeley, and a law degree from UC Law, San Francisco. We're very proud of that. All in our family. Spitzer was first elected to office on a seat to the Brea-Olinda School Board in 1992. He was elected to the 3rd Supervisorial District seat on the Orange County Board of Supervisors in 96. In 2002, he ran for a seat in the California Assembly to represent the 71st District, served 3 full 2-year terms where he championed Marsy's law that expanded the legal rights of victims of crime. Returning to Orange County in 2008, he served in the DA's office, then in 2012 was again elected to represent the 3rd Supervisorial District on the Board of Supervisors. In 2018, Spitzer ran for Orange County District Attorney and won over the incumbent, and just last year decisively beat his opponent by 41 points. A champion for public safety, District Attorney Spitzer is recognized as an expert on security issues whose reputation as an advocate for victims' rights is respected nationally. Spitzer served as state co-chair for Prop 83 and the nation's toughest sex offender punishment and control law, as well as Prop 69, which requires the collection of DNA samples from all felons. He's a doting father of a son and a daughter, and a dedicated husband to Judge Jamie Spitzer, presiding judge of the Workers' Compensation Appeals Board. One last thing. In 2009, Spitzer was diagnosed with cancer of his left vocal cord. As anyone in that situation will do, Todd researched the disease and sought out doctors across Southern California and landed with the best team at UCI Health. If I've got the mic. So his treatment included the Cancer Center's precise variant triology linear accelerator that had him immobilized on a table with a high-powered machine revolving around his head with 2 focused radiation beams on his voice box, hitting only the cancer. Therapy was successful. UCI and UCI Health is grateful to Todd for his continued advocacy in support of the Chow Family Cancer Center and our annual anti-cancer challenge that raises awareness and funds for cancer research. I'm glad they were successful, and he's a longtime friend and colleague, and I hope you will all join me in welcoming Orange County's District Attorney, Todd Spitzer.
He knows the name of that machine that was swirling around my head, and I think somebody had told me at one time what it was called, but I obviously have completely forgotten. So I had cancer, throat cancer, 15 years ago, and it was caused by acid reflux. And a lot of you have acid reflux. And if you're taking omeprazole or any of those medications which cut off your proton pump inhibitors in your stomach to try to reduce the acid, that is not a good long-term solution. So I actually, at Hoag, had a magnet sewn around my esophagus laparoscopically, and it actually now replaces the valve or the sphincter between my stomach and my throat. The magnet opens up to let food pass, and then it closes down to keep acid from coming up. So you have that too? Jolynn has that too? So the Mahonies are here. So when I see Steve with like a boot on his leg, and I had cancer, and I'm 62 now, and I'll be eligible for Medicare in 3 years, and then I hear about, I ran for my first office in 1992, and I've been doing this for now 30 years. I'm like, I don't know if you heard what I said. I was like, oh my God, I just got out of bed and I'm already tired. Like when you actually hear your career reiterated, you ask yourself a couple questions. 1, why did I get involved in this business in the first place? 2, have I had an impact? And 3, am I pleased with my career, and do I feel that the public is appreciative of the service? And I know Joe's here and Diane's here, and there's a lot of people who are commissioners and the like. And serving in public office, to me, is a very, very noble calling, very noble. But when you see that Senator Min got arrested on Tuesday night for a DUI, it's on the front page of the local section today, and he went on his Facebook page and talked about it. I am very sad about that, because when you're elected official and you waver, it ends up and it gets sensationalized. It's on the front page. I mean, people get DUIs all the time. I mean, I prosecute those, right? And I'm just grateful when people don't harm people. Like when we have serious injuries or death because people drink and drive or use drugs, I have no tolerance for that. I don't have tolerance for DUI, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is, after 30 years of being in this business, just like anybody in the private sector, from time to time, you have transgressions. Your transgressions, luckily, depending on what kind of business you're in, maybe you might get a little snippet in one of your trade magazines or things like that, but it's not on the news and on the front page of papers. And, I just like with Senator Min, I mean, that's a real life example. I think Dave's a good guy. I like him. He's always been very, very respectful to me and the work we're doing, and as supportive as possible, even though he sees the world very, very differently than I do, politically and otherwise. But irrespective, after doing this for 3 decades, we have to figure out how to work together as a community. And this county has changed so much over the last 30 years that if we don't figure out how to work together and understand that the population that's come into this county over the last few decades is substantially different than it has been. And as a result of that, there is going to be political change. Now, a lot of us don't accept that, and that's part of my message this morning, is I don't have a lot of good news to share. I am very, very disappointed in the direction that the state is going. I'm very disappointed in its judicial policies and the direction that it's going. I'm very disappointed in the tax policy of the state and the economy of this state. And the fact, and we're going to talk about fentanyl, I'm going to talk about that this morning, that the state, in my opinion, is not adequately addressing one of the most serious and fundamental pandemics that has ever hit the country, when we have lost 100,000 people who have died as a result of fentanyl. You heard I was a high school teacher. I taught in LA Unified School District. That district is a disaster. It's a disaster. That new superintendent they brought from Florida, there's nothing, in my opinion, he can do to save that school district. It's too big, it's too unmanageable, and it has too many problems. It should be divided into smaller districts, and it should govern LA through the issues that are pertinent to those particular jurisdictions. But I don't run LA, and believe me, I have been recruited and asked to move to Los Angeles and run against George Gascon and help, bring some sanity to what's happening in that city, because I was a police officer and a high school teacher, and I can't stand what's happening. Can't stand it. But I'm not moving to LA because I don't think it's fixable. You can't give everybody a house who's mentally ill and addicted to drugs and expect that they can take care of it. The average cost of a home in LA now is $1 million for a homeless person, but little secret, it's $700,000 here in Orange County for the homes we're building for the homeless. $700,000. Our son is an engineer, mechanical engineer, received his degree from San Luis Obispo. Super proud of him. He's married, 24. His wife is an engineer. She works at the Veterans Administration in Long Beach. She fixes and is responsible for all the medical devices. My son oversees the refrigeration units for the refrigeration used to cool chips for chip manufacturers. Great jobs. But my kids can't afford a $700,000 house in this county unless my wife and I participate. That's not acceptable to me. You can't build homes for the homeless, and college-educated kids can't buy homes. And at some point, there's going to be a conversion where the society is not going to tolerate this. When I was on the Board of Supervisors and we cleared the riverbed, you remember how bad the riverbed was next to the stadium? And that was my supervisorial district. I said, no way. That is not going to be the entrance to Orange County. But Dave Carter, the federal judge who married me and my wife 27 years ago, and a dear friend of mine, he said, Todd, you can clear the riverbed, but you have to build shelters. Under the Constitution, we hadn't had the Boise decision yet, but his philosophy was, unless you offer somebody a place, then you can't clear them out. And he was a little ahead of his time. We built the Kramer Place homeless shelter, transitional shelter in Anaheim, in my district. No other supervisor wanted to build one. I said, put it in my district. And no one even knows it's there. It's isolated, it's in an industrial area. We don't let people walk in, we don't let people walk out. It's all behind gates, and it's all quiet and really low key. And once we did that, we cleared the riverbed. As part of that, what's with the phones this morning? I know. You'll notice I keep throat coat with me, and it's because of my esophageal issue. Like, after this radiation, I agree that the device they did and allowed me to have, which there's a traditional way to treat stage 1 vocal cord cancer, but I guess because of who I am, UCI was kind enough to give me this whirly-bird, really sophisticated machine, which I didn't deserve. And, it burned my whole area. I don't even have to shave here anymore because all the follicles are dead. But when you're laying on that machine, and I was exposed to radiation for 7 minutes, I think it was about 7 minutes at a time. They give you this mask. You have this mask that's form-fitted to your face, and it's not bolted, but it's clipped down to this metal table, right, which is super cold when you get on it. I did that every day for 7 weeks, Monday through Friday. By week 3, you're so burned that then you start to lose, your voice is out because your vocal cords are completely fried. And I had a tumor on my vocal cord. I mean, I either was going to get it cut out, and I didn't know how bad that would be, or I decided to go with radiation. The issue about radiation is it does what it's supposed to do. It burns the tumor, but it also burns good tissue. And, you know, it's something I'm struggling with. I wake up every day, how's my voice going to be? I'm not sure. But, you know, I don't see any wood. Hold on. But the fact of the matter is, it saved my life. And my mom had died just the year before from colon cancer. So, listen, we live in an amazing place with some of the best medical care and the most sophisticated doctors and nurses and support staff. I mean, this is a great place to live. Unfortunately, this place is being destroyed as we watch it. It is happening all around us. I'm not happy about it. I'm sad, and I've been working for 30 years to prevent it. Let's just talk about fentanyl. I'm gonna give you my conclusion at the beginning. Not really the greatest speaking technique, but I want to say it this way, because in case I don't get to it. You live in an amazing place. When I first got here after law school over 30 years ago, this county had a reputation about being behind the orange curtain, right? That we were isolated, super conservative, intolerant of others, not very welcoming, very homogeneous, and I hated that reputation in this county. I fought against it. I thought it was offensive. In my very first office in school board in Brea, I was 32, not married, and the rumor, what they attacked me on in that race, not in publications but quietly, like the behind the scenes, was I was homosexual and that I wanted to be on a school board so I could be closer to little kids. Okay? And that was what was used against me in that race. Because this county has been extremely unwelcoming for diversity. And I fought against that, and I still fight against that every single day. We have a hate crimes unit in the district attorney's office, which I started, and I would argue we are the most vigorous DA's office in all of California against hate. I will not tolerate hate. I used to be on the Anti-Defamation League board. I had a judge, I went to a judge who I'm not too happy with right now, against a 3-time striker, white supremacist, swastika tattooed on his chest. I went to court on this case with my prosecutor because this guy's looking at 68 years to life because he keeps attacking people of color on the street and physically assaulting them, while he told this African-American woman who was pregnant, I'm going to drop your baby because you have no right to bear children, right? I don't want you bringing little African-American black boys and girls into our community. So I'm throwing the complete book at that guy. He's looking at 68 years to life. When I walked into chambers, this judge who is Armenian descent, she said, well, you're going to do, and I thought she was going to make this case go away and strike. Judges can strike the strikes, make them go away, make the guy look at it much less time. She said to me, well, if somebody attacked an Armenian, would you prosecute them? And I was like, of course I would. Why were you even asking me that question, Judge? I will prosecute anybody who expresses hate to anybody else in this county. And I'm proud of that because it's the right thing to do, but I'm proud of it because I really want the reputation of this county to be very different than what it has been historically. The other thing I'll tell you is as a Republican, which is only relevant this morning for this talk, for this point. When you get power, and I try to explain this to people who are running for office, who are young and excited and opportunistic for good reasons and want to serve their community. One of the most important things is if you achieve power, you need to use it responsibly. You need to be fair. You don't need to be partisan. You can assert your points of view, but make sure you're doing it on behalf of the community because you were elected by everybody. The other thing is, I want people to respect these offices. And if you don't mete out responsibility responsibly, then people are going to take that power away from you. That's why I do not appreciate the discourse that's going on in our country today. We are so divided. We are so intolerant of people and other points of view. But what's happening in Tucker Carlson, forget whether you like him or not. Just there's people who are stomping on his grave, and we are just that termination alone has caused, in my opinion, some horrible comments. Okay, let me talk about fentanyl. You all know, if you look at 2000, whoops, how do I reverse it? Probably like that. Fentanyl deaths are off the charts. And we have the executive director, who I know is going to want to make a comment. I'm welcoming her comment. It's not acceptable that this many people are dying. You had 3 people die in Newport Beach from buying street drugs. One of the persons survived. I think it was through a Airbnb. It doesn't really matter what the details. It can happen anywhere, anytime. This idea that people aren't going to experiment with drugs, especially our young people, is silly. Most of you in this room experimented with stuff when you were teenagers and did stupid things. You're just lucky. Me too. So when somebody buys fentanyl or a street drug which has fentanyl in it, this idea that it's an overdose and hey, if they're going to use drugs, so be it, which has been the attitude of police officers and law enforcement and prosecutors. It's because of the parents who have lost children and those who are activists in this space that we're now describing it for what it is. It's not an overdose, it's a poisoning. Because the amount of fentanyl, that's the bracelet which says it's a poisoning. That was a press conference I did with Mike Hestron, the DA of Riverside County. But I want to show you, see that just on the tip of the pencil, the number 2 lead pencil? It's enough crystals, basically it fits on Lincoln's nose. I mean, it's just a minuscule amount. And most of the street drugs today are being manufactured by the cartel in Mexico and brought here. And they're made with almost 100% fentanyl because it's so cheap and it takes so little amount to get you high that, you know, when you try to bring in bricks of cocaine, you get caught. But if you bring in small amounts of fentanyl, because you need less to get high, it's a lot easier to smuggle. So I started this ad campaign. OCTA, the bus authority, was kind enough to let me put these ads. We designed these ads internally. These were on the buses for several months. And we're trying to do our part, but I'm just one voice, but there's a lot of voices now talking about this. Okay, I just want to tell you on this. So Tom Umberg, who's a state senator from Garden Grove, had a bill in the legislature last week to allow people like me, when a drug dealer is convicted of selling drugs, to have the court admonish that drug dealer that, hey, in the future, if you sell drugs again and somebody dies and that substance contains fentanyl, the DA can prosecute you for murder. And this is very similar to something you're probably more familiar with, which is an advisement when we prosecute somebody for driving under the influence of alcohol. So when you go and you plead guilty or you're sentenced on a DUI, Mr. Spitzer, do you understand that driving under the influence is dangerous of drugs or alcohol? Yes. Do you understand that if you drink and drive and kill in the future, you can be prosecuted for second-degree depraved heart murder? And the difference is the mental state. So manslaughter is where somebody gets killed, vehicular. It can have civil, right? You hit somebody with your car, they die. No drugs or violation, just an accident. You could be prosecuted for vehicular manslaughter, say if you were speeding or you ran a stop sign. Where it gets criminal and where it devolves or evolves into murder is I, as a prosecutor, have to prove the mental state that the person knew that what they were doing was reckless, and it's called depraved heart. They have a depraved heart. They did it anyway, irrespective of the consequences. That's what the Watson advisement is in GUI. Umberg had the bill to do that for fentanyl. Democrat, chair of the judiciary, former drug czar of the United States of America under Bill Clinton, military officer, and very well-respected guy. He couldn't get one of his party to vote for that bill. So I hope he retaliates a little bit with their bills in the Judiciary Committee when they want their bills passed, but that's just me talking. But he couldn't get it through, which proves to me a couple things. The majority party in California is consistent. They wouldn't let my bills through when I was in the legislature when I tried to increase penalties, and they won't do it for anybody. So I at least can respect that consistency, because I don't like inconsistency. But let me make something clear to you. 20 years when I was in the legislature, Gloria Romero was the chair of the Senate Public Safety Committee, and Mark Leno was the chair of the Assembly Public Safety Committee. He's from San Francisco. I was on the Assembly Public Safety Committee when I was in the legislature. We had prison overcrowding. Gray Davis was thrown out. Schwarzenegger came in. And Arnold and I went all over the state to all these different prisons, and we saw all the overcrowding. They were using the gyms and areas like public areas, public spaces, not public, but inmate space, for housing, not for education, not for recreation. That had to stop. So I contracted through the state with outside prisons. I said, hey, I'm not letting anybody out early. You got sentenced, you're going to do your time. We contracted with private state prisons in other states. The state has now done away with all those private prison contracts. The governor, if you are paying attention, is proud that he's closing prisons in California. We've had more people released early. Do you know if you're under 25, you can be released early on parole, because there's a philosophy now that if you're under 25 in California, especially if you're a male, that your brain does not develop before you're 25. My wife tells me my brain still isn't developed at 62. If you're 50 or older, you're eligible for elder parole. 50 years old, you're considered elderly now if you're an inmate, which means the window of people who actually might suffer some responsibility is this narrow. And it's all for a purported purpose, has nothing to do with any of those theories that they purport. It all has to do with releasing people early and closing prisons. We are living in an era, and fentanyl's an example, where one, no one's responsibility for anything they do anymore in our society. We make excuses for everybody's conduct. Everybody has a woe me story, right? I get it. People have been raised poor. People have been raised without a dad. People have had to pull themselves up by the bootstraps. Life is tough. But then that gives you the ability to go and on the metro line in LA stab people, or go to a school and run them over in the valley. Remember that guy came back to his old school and mowed down a bunch of kids on the sidewalk? Because I have a bad life. So everybody who has a bad life, and I internally, raise your hand. I can complain all day long. I had lunch with my dad yesterday. I could have sat there for 2 hours and beat the crap out of my dad for things I didn't like about the way I was raised. But guess what? My sister and I are both lawyers, and we are so blessed for what we have. And I don't know why people don't appreciate anymore what they have, or the opportunities that we have created in this country for everybody to ascend. But it is what it is. That's the environment I'm living in. So Umberg's bill got killed. I don't have time for this. Where are you? How am I doing? 1 minute left? Holy smokes. Okay, I want to show you this slide, very important slide, and then I'll take questions. Because I've been rambling, but hopefully a little bit focused, but for a specific reason. Orange County is the safest large county in California, substantially. But that, in my opinion, is going to change. We have more home burglaries, home invasions. We have people in Shady Canyon whose homes have been surveyed for days because of the wide expanses in the green belts. If you live along a green belt, your home abuts a park or open space, you better start figuring out what you're going to do to see that side of your house. You also need to alarm your upstairs, your windows, and have motion detectors upstairs. Most people only have motion detectors downstairs. The point of entries tend to be the upstairs. They go for all the safes. Huntington Harbor in Huntington Beach has been just eviscerated by people coming in on boats, going in, and then they steal all the stuff, roll the safe down the stairs, and throw it on the boat, and then escape that way at night after watching your house. The primary problem is coming out of Chile. There's something called there's a 45-day visa. I had no idea until we started suffering all these burglaries. If you want to come into the United States from any country for 45 days or less, you can online apply for a visa. It's all electronic. The country of origin is supposed to, through Homeland Security, do a background check on you before the visa is granted. It's supposed to be a two-way check. Chile's not doing any background checks. We have about 30 Chileans in custody right now in Orange County. And I think Anaheim arrested 3 Chileans, I think yesterday, that we're going to be arraigning this week. So I just had a conference call with the members of Congress, our delegation, their staffs, and I'm trying to get Chile cut off from the 45-day visa as a nation, because the FBI has articulated that this is a national problem. This is not just an Orange County problem. So I'm working with Congress, our members, to try to get this done. But it's well documented, so stay tuned on that. But the people coming in our county are Los Angeles gang members, Chileans, and also gang members from San Bernardino and Riverside. And why? Because we're a target-rich environment. So I'll take questions, but let me make this comment, because I started about the orange curtain and I want to tie that in. We have to protect what we have. As much as I don't like this bubble curtain concept, what we have has got to be protected. We have to make it very clear, and some of you came up to me and thanked me, and I'm very, very grateful. You recognize that I am fighting a fight which is a national fight as a district attorney on a national stage. George Soros has elected DAs who could care less about public safety. Oh, shoot. Whose computer is this? Here, do the computer. I don't care about the table. See, I say George Soros and I get all animated. Sorry about that. George Soros has elected DAs now in Oakland. Pamela Davis sued police, and now she's the DA. She's lost about 15 prosecutors who have now gone to San Francisco, where they recalled Chesa Boudin, and now Ms. Jenkins is the DA, a career prosecutor. They took over New Orleans, Chicago, Philadelphia with Len Krasner, and Manhattan with Mr. Braggs, who's prosecuting former President Trump. It's less about keeping our communities safe and more about decarceration, which is a movement. It's called decarceration, which means to reverse incarceration. Look, our system of justice has not been fair to everybody. I know that, and I acknowledge it. I'll give you a quick example. When Merv Dimely, may he rest in peace, not lieutenant governor, when I was in the assembly with Merv, he came up to me and said, because he knew I was a leader on public safety, will you support making crack cocaine punishment the same as powder cocaine. It was more punitive, a higher sentence for crack than it was for powder. And his argument, fairly, was crack is a higher because it's directed at people of color versus white people who use powder cocaine. It's completely legitimate. I said to Merv, instead of lowering the punishment for crack, why don't we just raise the punishment for powder? He would have none of that. My point was, yeah, if you think powder is the white man's cocaine, let's increase the penalty for that. Why should we lower it for crack? So we didn't have a meeting of the minds. And he was a very, very, very amazing man. He was our lieutenant governor. And I consider him a really dear friend. I miss him a lot. Okay, questions. You get to start because you want to tell people.
Well, you were on fentanyl, so I'm Janice Celeste. I'm the president and CEO of fentanylsolution.org. And I do want you to speak about what you're doing federally to...
Oh, I should explain that. Yeah.
Because that's important. You talked about Tom Umberg's bill knocking through. We were official supporters of that bill. However, his isn't the only one. Any bill that tries to do the Public Safety Committee that has any kind of penalty is not going through. Time again. And as you said, it's killing kids, So we're here to protect kids. So what we're doing is we're putting a proposition on that. We need everybody talking about that. I need you to see me after, contact me on our website, fentanylsolution.org. It is a $3 million lift for us to get it on the ballot. And most of that has to do with advertising, signatures, all of that costs money to get signatures. And what we're going to do is, we're doing a poll right now, it's already started, $100,000. The poll will dictate what the legislature will say. So we know the public wants, stronger laws for the most part. We do have opposition. A lot of that money is going to go to fight the opposition and educate people why this isn't a war on drugs. This is totally different. The internet has changed this, made it a whole different monster. We have drug dealers killing exponentially. We've never had that in the history of this country. So those are the two things we did a white paper on. That is not a war on drugs. And I just want to say that, but I would love for you to talk about how you're circumventing that.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for the work you're doing, okay? Statewide initiatives, I ran one, Prop 9 in 2008, but I had a billionaire who lives in Newport Coast give me $7 million, and so I was able to run his campaign. And we got Marsy's Law passed in 2008. Marsy's Law was his sister, Marsy Nicholas, and I'm talking about the Broadcom founder, Henry Nicholas. And his sister was murdered when she graduated from UC Santa Barbara by her ex-boyfriend who shot her head off with a shotgun. And so, I don't know if you know, but parole hearings, we used to go in person to parole hearings to prisons to fight people getting out. Because they want to let everybody out, they've now eliminated our ability to make personal appearances, and all parole hearings are by Zoom. It is a much different, I don't know if any of you love the theater, obviously you watch movies, but there's nothing like being in the room with that emotion and creating that environment in a very small space, which has tremendous impact on the parole board. When the victims aren't there and they can't hear the crying and they don't see that kind of the trauma, that long-lived trauma after 20, 30 years of the murder, they've taken all that away. It's really offensive. So let me tell you what I did. I'm so sick and tired of the way the state has addressed fentanyl that I now have assigned a full-time prosecutor that you pay, but through my office budget. And now she is full-time in the United States Attorney's Office, prosecuting fentanyl dealers who kill. Under state law, I told you about the mental state that I have to prove. I have to prove the person knew that what they were doing was dangerous. In other words, that they knew that there was fentanyl in the drug. Feds, that's not an element of the crime. They don't have to prove that the person knew it was fentanyl. If they can prove that they sold drugs and the person died, coroner's report, as a result of fentanyl, 20 years to life. 20 years to life. These drug dealers are pleading guilty all over the place saying, hey, will you give me 10 years, 12 years? I'll agree to 13 years, please. Just let me plead guilty. Because they don't want to do 20. And so we're getting convictions, and the feds, they don't mess around. Like, I don't, the federal government does not mess around. So I did that. And I put this up because AB 109 was what changed. It used to be people went to state prison. Now they stay in county jail they can stay in county jail for years on certain crimes. And then they get out, instead of being under parole supervision, they're under probation department, our local probation. Probation was never designed to monitor hardcore felons, parolees. So that role of probation has changed. But I created an AB 109 task force, and now we go out and hook and book. I don't put up with any of this. We door knock, we check out these people who are on parole, and we don't mess around. Ike Sauser, you may remember, Ike Sauser killed his mom, 13 years old, was prosecuted as a juvenile over our objection. He then escaped from juvenile. It was all over the news. He then was released by a judge to a halfway house. He cut off his ankle bracelet, escaped again. We're prosecuting. We were in court yesterday. He had a shank in Orange County Jail. And now we're prosecuting him as an adult for having a shank in a custodial facility. And on Easter Day last year, I had to leave because my AB 109 task force went and arrested Ike Sauser, who had absconded. And Easter, rain, shine, snow, sleet, we don't care. We are not putting up with the crap, to the best of our ability, that the state has been trickling down to us and making us responsible for it when they don't want to have any responsibility for these people. It's not going to happen in Orange County, all right? And then I'll just say this. So my term is a 4-year term. This is how conniving and sneaky they are. So the sheriff and I are elected to 4-year terms. I was elected and he was elected last June. We won 4-year term. The legislature gave us 2 extra years on our terms. So Don and I now have 6-year terms. So we have to run in presidential. Why is that? Because they don't want me and Don Barnes to be the law enforcement officers of this county. They gave us 2 years to put us in a presidential, higher voter turnout, more liberal turnout. They did that to all the DAs in the state of California to get rid of us. Not that everybody's like, wow, you got 2 extra years. Yeah, that's a ruse. That wasn't because they're gracious. It's because they want to get rid of people who are like me. They don't want me talking like I've talked to you for the last 40 minutes about protecting this county. Julian, last question, because I know you. Oh, and then in the back. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
What do you think about AB 793 that's working its way through the state committees?
What is it? What's 793?
It's
I know all 792, but I forgot about 793. No,
my understanding is they're trying to eliminate your ability to geofence to get.
Yeah, okay. Now I know the bill. Okay, so check this out. So let's take a fentanyl dealer. Fentanyl dealer has a cell phone, and they sell drugs. The decedent, the person who bought the drugs and took the fentanyl or the pill and died, has a cell phone. So what the officers can do is they can run where this phone was of the drug dealer, where the decedent's phone, and we can generally put them in the same place at the same time. Not a coincidence. Like, that's really powerful evidence to a jury, right? That's called geofencing. We can run a search warrant on, tell me how many phones were in a particular area, this number, where was it? We can geofence it. There's a bill called the Reproductive Rights Protection. Who could vote, right? Who in the Sacramento, the majority party, is going to vote against reproductive rights? It's under this auspice. As you know, California is funding women to come here from other states to have abortions. Okay, if that's the legislature's decision, you know what? I don't support it, but they are saying we don't want the government from those other states to be able to follow those women and know where they were to get an abortion in California. So we're eliminating geofencing in California. Well, whoa. This is the issue you have in the bill, women coming here to protect reproductive rights, and this is your solution, cutting out all law enforcement for every kind of activity in perpetuity. Like, are you kidding me? Police officers and detectives will not be able to solve crimes. We know when people are burglarizing houses because we geofence and we know that their cell phone, or they turn it off, but we have them leaving the area. That's powerful evidence. Circumstantial, but super helpful in front of a jury when you add up all the other circumstances. They want to eliminate our ability to track. They want consent to police officer pulls over a car. Sir, Officer Spitzer, registration license, blah, blah, blah. After the conversation goes, do you have anything in your car that, is illegal? No. Do you mind if I search your car? Would you give me permission? Sure, I have nothing to hide. They have a bill to make consent unlawful in California. In other words, if you give consent, you cannot give consent. They want to eliminate consent. The list goes on and on and on and on. Your legislature could not be more out of control. And this is what we're facing. So, again, back to my theme, question in the back.
What, in your opinion, is the motivation for decarceration? Is it to garner favor and get votes? Is it to just create chaos? I mean, what's the end game?
The end game, in my little 30-plus year opinion of doing this, is there's a majority of legislators who come from communities who strongly believe, and I can't necessarily argue, I've already made this argument that I think a lot of it is true, where the police and prosecutors have been unfair to people in their communities generationally. So they're going to use this opportunity to level the playing field. They're going to make us suffer today's society for the past sins of behavior in the past. And that's happening in a lot of other policy areas, right? So that's a philosophy. And what I'm saying is, look, if people did wrong in society, which I will submit they have, police have used unlawful force, police have made bogus arrests. I would argue it's less common, although still pervasive enough and concerning. But it's especially happened in the South. The southern part of our United States has been a terrible example of policing in America. And I'm just saying today that there are people who say we need to fix those past sins of America through our policies of today. And to me, the nexus is very attenuated. In other words, there's a nexus, of course there's a nexus through subsequent generations. But at what point are you going to say we're going to throw out everything in terms of public safety to right the wrongs of the past? And it's nebulous, it's hard to articulate, but I do believe that's the motivation. And that's why crime has skyrocketed. Because people who are committing our crimes are not in prison today, and they need to be in prison. And that's very upsetting to me, and it should be upsetting to you. So in conclusion, I can see the bodyguards. One, I hope I gave you a little bit of insight with some strong evidence and some potential solutions of what's happening. I want you to know I have stood my ground, okay? I will not let this nonsense come into Orange County to the best of my ability. And the margin that I won by in June, the 41-point margin, despite I had a Soros candidate against me, to me is testament that this public here still supports what I stand for. And that, at least it's good to know that I and Don Barnes and other law enforcement officials have public support. But in conclusion, I'll say this one last thing. There are many people in law enforcement today who are running with their tail between their legs. They're afraid to stand up for law enforcement. They feel that it's not the right place to be. And I wrote a piece I didn't get time to talk about in the Orange County Register about 3 weeks ago, defending the police. Why aren't the police writing those pieces about the chiefs? Why aren't they talking about defending the police? Why is the DA talking about defending the police? And I think it's because chiefs are appointed by city managers, and I'm elected. So I have a different platform than somebody who's appointed because they They're appointed at the whim of a council to a city manager and the like. I'm not going to give that up. I'm going to continue to stand our ground. And quite frankly, I'm doing it because it's for all of us. It's the right thing to do, and it's because it's so darn important, because the state is moving in a direction that I hope we can turn around, but I'm not sure how soon that will happen. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. I won't spill again, I don't think.
Thank you. Help me join me and help me thank our DA. We're going to get closed by Steve here, and let's see him hobble over.
Actually, our fire chief, Jeff Boyles, wanted to say quick, want to come up, do it? A couple things about fentanyl? Okay.
Todd, I'm appointed by a city manager, so with that said, I would like to thank you for your stance on this for fentanyl. Two things I would like for this audience to know from my perspective as a fire chief. One, the nefarious nature behind fentanyl is not in the traditional sense of a lot of our drugs, heroin users, methamphetamine users, things like that. Fentanyl many times is laced, and we're seeing good kids, high school kids, college kids, they may be cramming for a final and they think they're taking an Adderall or something. People have been there, right? But it's fentanyl and now they're dead. So we're dealing with this type of problem. Secondarily, that leads us to now, we are out, police and fire departments are out in the schools, giving Narcan to teachers and staff and training them on how to use it. Out of the bathroom or out on campus or wherever. So we've reached a whole new level of fentanyl crisis. It's just mind-boggling that we're not able to push through legislation to help avoid it. So we're dealing with it at the street level, which is basically dealing with the end problem where I would like to see approval of. So that's it.
Thank you, Jeff. It's certainly an insidious drug, and a lot of work to be done there. On a brighter note, though, we've got a lot of great events coming up this month. So if you enjoyed this morning, please join us for some other things that we're doing. We have our networking luncheon series. We'll continue on May 17th, Wednesday at Fleming's. That's from 11:30 to 1:30. All these events are on our website too, at newportbeach.com, so you can go there and you don't need to write anything down. We're doing our very first Fire It Up Friday cigar smoker. So for the cigar smokers in the audience, join us. We'll be on our patio at the Chamber, and that's going to be on May 19th from 4 to 6 p.m. If you're not a cigar smoker, maybe you don't want to come to that one. But you do want to come to our Sunset Mixer. It's going to be at Calaveras. Calaveras is a new Mexican restaurant on Bristol, a new Chamber member. Thursday, May 25th from 5:30 to 7:30. If you're a Chamber member, please come a little bit early. And if you're not a Chamber member, I don't know why you're not. You should be. But if you're not, if you are, come at 5 o'clock because we're going to do our annual meeting. I have to have a 5% quorum. So we have about 720 members now. We are the largest chamber in the county now, I believe. And so I got to have 36 members there so we can vote on our new board of directors. So please come early. And then finishing up the month, we'll be doing our 60th annual athletic awards dinner. It's going to be at the Pacific Club. It's a great event. We honor the top 35 student athletes from Corona Del Mar, Harbor, and Sage Hill schools. And it's always great to hear what these kids have been doing and where they're going to be going in the fall. And then next month, we'll flip to maybe the Democratic side of the aisle. We're going to have Congresswoman Katie Porter here on June 1st. So I'm sure it'll be a packed audience for that too. Oh, no. We got a Lincoln Club member over here. No. No. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you when we see you. Take care.